Welcome back, Sleepyheads, to another episode of Sleepy Aliens Perspective. I am your host, Leigh. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting me. So, on tonight's episode, given a trigger warning, we are going to be talking about self-death complex. And of course, I can't use the regular term that we would use for that. So I hope you can get what I'm trying to say, and I can't say it just because the algorithm on some of these platforms, they will really just funk your whole system up if you use certain words. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about this issue because it's something that I've overcome, and I think it's just a part of my purpose to share my experience with it and my journey and my perspectives on the issue. And I also want to be a part of, just opening and normalizing people talking about it more, because so many people go through it. It's a leading cause of death in multiple countries. It's a leading cause of death through multiple age groups. It's not a secret thing. Every year there's at least 2 celebrities who commit self-death, and it just adds to the oddity and the taboo around society, like still not progressing their understanding, their perspectives, and the communication surrounding the issue. And that's what I want to get into first. So why does society still struggle around talking about self-death and just socially healing from that together? One, of course, there are good things associated with religion and organized religion. I acknowledge those good traits. But unfortunately, biblical things and religious communities have created that air of shame around self-death complexes to the point where it's been perceived as logic that self-death is a crime and it's a spiritual crime. It's a social crime and it's a spiritual crime, right? And that shame only intensifies the amount of internalizing that people who struggle with self-death complexes have to deal with, because already, they are struggling to vocalize that, they have this issue that, they don't know how to deal with. But one, they don't want to be called crazy, thrown into a hospital. They don't want to be, socially rejected from their social groups and their families. They don't want to be a burden to their social groups and their families. So there's so much there that people aren't considering when it comes to people who are struggling with self-death complex. And that gets into the next aspect of why society can't progress and heal this issue. Socially, people perceive it as selfish and weak if, someone commits self-harm, or if someone attempts to, right? And of course that comes from that religious, teaching that has just been drilled and become a logic. But people really need to put themselves in that other person's shoes and understand that in addition to having like the thought cycles and the thought complexities that come with self-death, there's neurological abnormalities that happen to people, like hippocampus, it shrinks, amygdala, it's just on high alert all the time, perceiving these threats to wellness. There's physical things that are affecting a person's ability to change their perception. So please keep those things in mind, in the same way that we now can acknowledge that, addiction is a mental health issue, right? Acknowledge that self-death complexes is a mental health issue. And if you are so blessed to have never, had to overcome, the spiritual attack of a self-death, contemplation or attempt or anything like that, if you've never even had those kind of thoughts, understand that you're very, very lucky, because it's not easy to deal with, it's not easy to overcome, and it's not easy to heal from. And so instead of looking at the people who have committed, self-death as, weak and selfish, consider their plight and consider the amount of pain that their mind must have felt that it was in, and yeah. And some people experience some heavy shit in life that, yeah, it doesn't make it easy to wake up every day, right? And not all people have that perception of, people struggling or who have committed self-death as being selfish and weak, but it's definitely still dominant in society, I believe, Like I didn't, I'll get into my story in a little bit. But second thing I want to talk about is the spiritual perspective around self-death. So first I want to talk about birth certificates. I know I'm going to go into so many different layers of this, but just try to keep up with me, and I'm definitely going to have to cut this in another section, but hopefully I finish this one in at least 22 minutes. Okay, but birth certificates. I don't want to make another Harry Potter reference, but I need people to understand that your birth certificate is more than a government document. Consider the possibility that there's, a spiritual opposition operating in this dimension, this universe, and your birth certificate tells these people your astrological projections, your birth chart. And I know a lot of people don't, want to give astrology hype or too much belief, but it lays out a baseline for a person's character, their future, their issues. So if you were a spiritual opposition, you would want to know that information to know the threat of an individual and the kind of obstacles the individual face and how you can intensify those obstacles, right? So consider Harry Potter and the Room of Prophecies. It's basically the same thing. Your birth certificate is a paper that can prophesize your potential to heal this dimension, and that's why that information is so vital. And I say this because I need people to understand the relevance consciously of age. So age, of course, is a three-dimensional construct. And spiritually, if you are spiritual opposition, age is so helpful because it segments your consciousness. It's not like a full MK Ultra, but it gives this, it kind of like every age, every birthday, you're like putting a file folder of memories, emotions, and birthdays. I hate to say this, but you're, participating in a ritual where you celebrate this segment of your consciousness and you consciously file away that age and you start a new segment of your consciousness in a different age. And this is important because when it comes to healing self-death complex, you're going to have to go through all of those age segments to really heal all the layers of that complex, right? So that's why I think it's really important for people to, one, acknowledge, the relevance of your birthday and what age does to your consciousness. I'm sure I said everything about that. But I also, so another aspect to the age thing is that you basically have to perceive the fact that in your subconscious, of course we all say like, oh, your inner child, have some fun, you need that. But in your subconscious, your inner child exists as a full being still. It is a full person still. It is a full part. It has that segmented consciousness, kind of trapped in the time loop of those memories and emotions and those perceptions surrounding that age. So that's why that's so important. But to heal your self-harm complex, there are two important things you have to first acknowledge. And this was hard for me as well. And number one is the fact that you feel hopeless. And I think this is hard for people to admit because, we're taught to be tough and we're not, society doesn't make it easy to talk about these issues, and it really puts a stamp of social stigmas on you. But, and also we have our ego and our pride, and we don't want to admit that, that we feel hopeless. It's a hard thing to admit, but you have to admit that your inner child, that 12-year-old version of you, 11-year-old, whatever age you started having, issues with the self-death complex, that version of you still believes that you're hopeless. Even though adult you is like, I can go to therapy, I can, start exercising, I can try yoga, I can try meditation, but why am I still dealing with this self-death complex? And that's because 11-year-old you, that full being that's still alive in your subconscious, completely believes that life is still hopeless. And that perception gets projected to your adult version, and that's where that discordance and how you rebound from episodes of self-death where you're okay for a period and you're like, wow, that was strange that I had those thoughts out of nowhere again. I've been feeling so good. That's where that comes from. You still have those older versions of you layered back that still have a perception of hopelessness and wanting to, that's still believing that self-death is the first and only option to heal, right? So that was, so the first step was really recognizing your complex with hopelessness, and then step two is getting ready to really acknowledge, sit down, get your journal, think about the age when you started having thoughts of self-death, and write down from the mindset of that age version of you, write down how you perceived life, love, family, and friends. And that'll give you a baseline for the perspectives and the narratives surrounding that particular age version of you, how they believed life was at that time. And that baseline of perspectives will show you what you need to heal in that inner child. And once you have that baseline of what you need to work with, it's going to begin that process of unraveling the layers of perspectives, because the perspectives, not only is it segmented by age, but it's segmented by memories, by certain individuals. So you are just going to have to keep healing layers and layers of that issue. But also neurologically, you're going to have to intentionally rewire your channels for how you interpret triggering events that bring you back to that self-death complex, So, gosh, there's so many layers to this, but I hope that made sense. Let me just make sure I'm on track here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to get into my personal journey really briefly before I go into the next segment, because it'll just help me give you an example of what I mean by those childhood perspectives and the baseline for that. So I started having issues with self-death complex when I was a preteen. My life, my childhood you know, was pretty, it was a mixture of beautiful moments, but there was a lot of dark moments too. I grew up with a single mom. My dad left when I think I was like 6 or 7, very young. I was molested when I was a preteen, and I also lived with my childhood predator for quite a few years, and I didn't tell anybody about it because it just, yeah, I internalized a lot of things. So I kept it a secret, and that basically began, you know, it birthed my self-death complex. And also just other issues with, you know, not quite fitting in at school and dealing with a lot of social rejection and then being like the black sheep of my family. There's just so much to it, and young me, you know, really, my schemas about life was that no one cares, no one understands, no one can help me. I felt helpless on just all across, and I also was aware of how, even I'm pretty sure I started watching Oprah at that age, you know. Oprah is actually how I discovered that I was molested, because I saw an episode about it after school. So thanks, Oprah, even though we won't get into that. But thank you, Oprah, for that. I will say that. But yeah, so all of my schemas about life were dark and negative, but I didn't understand that at that age, and I didn't understand for so long that I had to change my inner child schemas about life. And just so you guys know, I eventually did tell my family what happened to me. I didn't pursue any legal action just because of other circumstances and complexities in that, but I think the most powerful healing is when you can heal on your own, and you can heal yourself, and you don't need closure from another person to heal. It's like the most powerful kind of healing you can do, because that makes you self-regenerative, basically, right? But yeah, so those were basically the baseline of my perspectives about life, and I had to change that. And of course, personally, I had so much like trauma that, you know, I experienced and witnessed in my childhood, that I had so many layers to my schemas that I had to peel back and heal, and I had to go through all of my age segments, and I still am, because, you know, it takes a while to really heal those neural pathways surrounding, you know, those beliefs about life and death, and, you know, having faith and not feeling hopeless about things. It takes a long time, but there's still going to be triggers sometimes. Like a huge trigger for me are financial triggers, you know. I was like aware of all of the financial stress that my mom went through as a kid, and I think because I was just I was psychic, you know, so I read her emotions and I could feel them, and like a child's telepathic understanding of their parents is just very strong, and it was very strong for me, and it was hard to watch my mom go through that, and I just had so much anxiety around money, and I have so many layers that I have to peel back with that, of course, and I'm still peeling it back, you know. And I think that's why it's so hard to manifest money, because you have to feel that you have that now, and when you have so many layers of trauma and anxiety surrounding money, it's really hard to get your consciousness to believe that, you know, you have $5 million in the bank, and your Porsche is parked outside, and you have a really nice 3-bedroom house with a garden in the back, you know. But yeah, so that's, I don't know how I got there. I was going on a tangent. But to anybody who's going to undergo that process of healing their self-death complex, spiritually we would call this your dark night of the soul, right? We would call this shadow work because you're going to have to go into the darkest spaces of your memories and your emotions, and you're going to have to, you know, what do I always say? Like, you are the light, you are the sunshine, and you're going to have to light those spaces up in your consciousness. And that is going to allow your subconscious to project that light that's being blocked, you know, that light that comes from your higher self that goes through your subconscious and then reflects to your consciousness, and then it can reflect through your reality, and life should be magical, right? But there's a blockage there, and your subconscious can't get that light through, but you're going to bring that light through when you heal that complex, essentially. That was another tangent there, but I hope that makes sense. There's just so many layers to this that I wanted to touch on. But you know what? We're just going to do a part 2. In part 2, I'm basically going to talk about wellness tips that can help you as you go through the process. But to wrap up the first part of this episode, as a society, we need to start talking about this issue. We need to be better. We need to be more understanding. People struggling with this issue, you can overcome it. It's just going to take, one, you have to combine spirituality, and you're going to have to combine science if you want to heal this issue, because it's both, you know? And I know people don't want to believe in the spiritual aspects of it, but it's both, and you're going to have to combine both of those things to heal it. And that's why I was trying to give you both perspective. I was trying to give you a little bit of both in my breakdown of all that. Another aspect, mainly you're going to have to tap into your childhood schemas, and you're going to have to change those perspectives. And that's going to be a process, and there's going to be a lot of layers. Can't be done overnight. And you're going to have, you know, episodes, because you're going to have so many trauma triggers that you're going to have to go back and heal and peel back layers. And you're going to have to forgive people. You're going to have to let shit go. There's just so much to it. So yeah, please do tune into part 2, and I'm going to go over some wellness tips. It won't be as long as this episode, but I hope you guys found this to be helpful. This is really the first time I've like talked about my complex with self-death, you know, and I didn't even start talking about this publicly until actually 2020. What a fucking year, right? Yeah, I like came out to like a group of friends about it, and I think they were as like understanding as they could have been, because in my mind, just like talking about it and saying, hey, I deal with this issue, was a sign of huge healing. But, you know, I think in their minds they're like, okay, is she okay? Are they going to be okay, you know? Or, you know, is this for attention? They don't really know what's going on, right? So again, that's why I really want to open the conversation about the issue, because, gosh, a person's reaction, you know, can really make a person withdraw and go back into their shell. But I am not going to go back into my shell. My intention of making this video spiritually was to slay the fucking demon that's been haunting me since I was a teenager. So, demon has been slayed. I'm actually going to bake a cake after I film the next part of this to celebrate. A gluten-free cake. It's actually my first gluten-free cake, and I haven't baked anything. I think the last time I baked something may have been 2019, maybe 2018. So this is actually me baking my first gluten-free cake, and baking in a long time. And spiritually, I've been fighting a huge, long battle for the past 4 years, as I've really like broken into like my purpose and my confidence, and, you know, just owning who I am, right? It took me quite a journey to get there. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting me. I hope this was helpful. If there's anything I didn't touch on, please let me know in the comments. And if anybody would like me to elaborate on anything in a future video, please also leave, you know, a statement about that in the comments, and I'll check it out. because I did touch on some spiritual things that, you know, a lot of people may not believe, but hey, just dropping the spiritual gems. Take it as you want. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and tune into part 2 for this, and have a good night, sleepyheads.